And you're watching Eagle News International. On tonight's headlines. Various proclamation rallies of the presidential and vice presidential bets, as well as their senatorial slate, are set with the start of the 90-day campaign period for the May 2022 national candidates. An estimated 13 million people in Kenya, Somalia, and Ethiopia are facing severe hunger as the Horn of Africa experiences its worst drought in decades.
Southern Ethiopia.
U.S. President Joe Biden made a categorical vow at a meeting with Germany's Chancellor Olaf Scholz to shut down the controversial Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline from Russia to Europe if Moscow launches an invasion of Ukraine. And cosplayers in the Philippines dress up as superheroes from Marvel to DC Comics universe and join forces to persuade children to get vaccinated. Various proclamation rallies of the presidential and vice presidential bets, as well as their senatorial slate, kicked off today with the start of the 90-day campaign period for the May 2022 national candidates. Currently, there are 10 presidential candidates, 9 vice presidential bets, 64 senatorial candidates. Former Senator Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos and his running mate Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte held their proclamation rally at the Philippine Arena in Bulacan. Let's take a look.
Maraming salamat po. Hindi kaya ng isang tao na iangat ang Pilipinas. Kaya naman po, napakaaming pahayag ang aming balat.
By the current administration, but also to bring a more prosperous future, we must protect President Bongbong Marcos.
Now, they were joined by former Public Works and Highways Secretary Mark Villar, former Palace spokesperson Harry Roque, Representative Lauren Legarda, former Senator Jingo Estrada, and Representative Rodante Marcoleta, former Quezon City Mayor Herbert Bautista, lawyer Larry Gadon, and former Senator and Information and Communications Technology Secretary Gregorio Gringo Honasan. Meanwhile, Vice President and presidential aspirant Leni Robredo started their campaigning period by visiting Naga City, followed by a mini rally in Libmanan and a grand rally. After visiting Naga City, Robredo visited the Angat Buhay village in Lupi and will then head for the Libmanan rally. Let's listen in.
Sa pagpasok kasi kinakamusta ko. Kinakamusta ko po yung mga residente at sila tatanggapin nyo na sobrang proud din kayo sa mga ginawa nyo. Bakit ko po ito sa inyo kinikwento at bakit andito tayo ngayon?
For today's schedule, Robredo had already started going around in the province of Camarines Sur. Meanwhile, Partido Reforma standard-bearer Senator Panfilo Liping Lacson said he is determined or assured that they will strictly maintain health protocols during their proclamation rally in Imus, Cavite as the campaign period for national candidates officially kicked in. Let's take a look.
Alam niyo ba kung ilan ang estudyante sa Pilipinas? Kinuwenta rin namin. Halos 30 milyon. Alam niyo, hindi sa pagmamayabang, talaga merong salita, no? Parehong salita, gawa, at saka yung paninindigan. So doon ako humuhugot ng lakas ng loob. Maski may lumabas na mga previous surveys na iba yung nangunguna, sa oras ng halalan, tulad ko, babalik ako dito, sila babalik din sa kapwa kapitbahay nyo. As I mentioned earlier, no, we will run a very disciplined campaign. Disciplined in the sense na dahil may health protocols, I think yun doon kami mag-stand out. No? Makikita yung diferensya compared sa ibang mga kandidato. Yes, pwede pag-usapan yung ibang kandidato pero hindi sa pamamaraan na sisiraan. Halimbawa, merong isang kandidato na nangako na lahat ng Pilipino magkakaroon sariling bahay. Huwag na natin sabihin kung sino. No? Kinuwenta ko yun eh. 5.3 million ang backlog sa housing. Alam nyo ba kung magkano isang housing unit? Kapag horizontal, 580,000 pesos. Pagka yung pagka-vertical, pagka yung nakatungtong sa 40 square meter lot na 24 square meter na bahay, 750,000. Ito yung 2019 pa, ngayon may inflation na. Kinuwenta ko lahat yon. Ang kailangang pondo na manggagaling sa GAA, sa General Appropriations Act, mahigit 500 bilyon isang taon. For 6 years. Kasi may 3 trilyon pag kinuwenta mo Hindi kami mangangako ng ganon.
Statement, he also said that he will promote social justice in the process, especially for the working class Filipinos who always have had a hard time fighting to get decent wages. Lacson also explained how his plans for the digitalization of all government processes can address the constant problem of lower wage earners seeking better salary increments from their employers. Meanwhile, Manila Mayor Francisco Isko Moreno Dumagoso and his vice presidential candidate Dr. Willie Ong also held their proclamation rally at the Kartilya ng Katipunan in Ermita, Manila. Dumagoso and Ong held a motorcade around the city earlier. Again, let's listen in.
Na mga kakilala natin, starting today, our 90-day journey together. Salamat sa Diyos, binigyan tayo ng magandang weather. Marami ngayon na mga kakilala natin, kababayan natin sa Mindanao, kababayan natin sa Visayas, kababayan natin sa Luzon, ang absent kumain. Buti ba ang ibang tao, sa iba absent. Ang taong mahirap, absent lagi sa pagkain. Ang laban ng bawat tatay paggising sa umaga, mahirap din. Dahil lahat tayo naghahangad ng mabuting kinabukasan sa mga anak natin. Ang nanay natin paggising sa umaga, mahirap din ang laban. Lahat tayo dito, mahirap ang laban araw-araw. Araw-araw dahil gusto natin mapabuti ang ating mga anak.
Meanwhile, presidential candidate and Senator Manny Pacquiao started their campaign activities as the 90-day campaign season for national candidates officially began today. Pacquiao was initially scheduled to join a media briefing before the Team Probinsya Muna Development Initiatives or PROMD caravan kicked off in General Santos this afternoon. After the events in the city, Pacquiao's team will move to Sarangani province on the second day of their campaign period. Meanwhile, President Duterte said he has already started packing up his belongings and getting ready to exit Malacanang Palace as the election campaign officially kicked off today. He also said he's not supporting any candidate for now. Take a look.
Almost all of the candidates, in one way or the other, communicated to me na makipag-usap, hingi ng suporta. I may, in the end, if I see that it would be my advice and maybe endorsement would help kung kailangan. But at this time, I am saying that I'm not supporting anybody. Gusto ko kasi maglabas na puro ko kaibigan, unless there is a compelling reason really for me to change my mind. Nag-impact yan na nga ako I wait the day of turnover. Matikman ko rin yung feeling ng outgoing president. I will be the one to meet the new president. Then I will invite him here for a tokatis.
Now, instead of staying in his official residence in Malacanang compound, he also said he plans to buy a two-bedroom condo in Manila and only visit the palace for day-to-day activities. The president and his family's official residence is in Davao City. He said he wanted his next residence to be affordable because he could not afford expensive houses. The president said he doesn't need a big house because his children were all grown up and even have their own political careers now. Meanwhile, the Commission on Elections reminded candidates of the restrictions that will be implemented for in-person campaigning, among other rules, as the 90-day campaign period kicked off today. Again, let's listen in.
So, dahil nga po sa new normal tayo ngayon, hindi na po kagaya ng dati ang pangangampanya. Sabi ko nga, pag naisip ng kandidato, pwede lang din gawin. Ngayon, may mga restrictions na nga po, gaya po ng mga in-person campaign, yung pag house to house po ng mga kandidato na dati naman ay regular lang yun na nangyayari. Ngayon may mga restrictions na, gaya na hindi na po maaaring pumasok ang kandidato sa mga bahay kahit po may permiso pa to ng may-ari. Bawal na rin po yung may mag-kiss po or mag-hug, handshake, or anything po na mayroong physical contact because you need to maintain or observe po yung sinasabing minimum public health standards. So, bawal na rin po yung pag-crowding, yung lalapit po, no? Yung dudumugin po yung kandidato, lalo na po siguro kung popular yung kandidato, bawal na yon. Bawal din po ang pag-take ng selfie. At lagi naman pong bawal, of course, yung pagbibigay po ng pagkain at domain or anything of value ngayon pong pag-campaign. So, yung pong mga kandidato na nais mag-in-person campaign or mag-hold po ng mga meeting events, rally, focuses, caravans, po yung motorcade, they need to file an application po dun sa respective pong COMELEC campaign committee. So for mga national candidates po, ang application po nila ay sa mga regional offices po ng COMELEC. For yung local, provincial level, sa provincial COMELEC offices, and then city municipalities, din po sa mga tanggapan ng city or municipal election officers. So ngayon po, meron na pong ganoon na kailangan pa po nilang mag-apply. And they need to be authorized prior po dun sa conduct ng campaign.
The COMELEC official also said the live streaming of the rallies of the national candidates will also start today. She added that they had a meeting on Monday where they briefed the candidates and their representatives on how to go about live streaming. Every day, starting February 8 today, there will be 3 sets of candidates per night where they will be given the chance to live stream their campaign rallies on the poll body's e-channel via www.facebook.com COMELEC Rally Channel. In other news, the Los Angeles Consul General is urging Filipinos to sign up and vote for the deadline of registration for the upcoming May 2022 national and local elections. Here's Eva Basalyahe for the report.
In the heavily populated Filipino-American community in LA, the Philippine Consulate General Los Angeles is reaching out to registered voters, encouraging them to cast their ballots for the upcoming Philippine presidential election.
We have actually the biggest Filipino diaspora, not just in the United States, but in the entire globe. Under our jurisdiction, we have 1.3 million Filipinos, and the majority of whom are, of course, in LA County. The upcoming presidential elections this year is very important. It is a pivotal moment in our history because, as you know, we just went through, or we're still going through, a global pandemic. The economy of the country has been affected severely. So the challenge really is for the next president to make sure that we recover swiftly, but also effectively, to bring back our country into its normal footing. The main challenge is to provide jobs, create jobs, more jobs to our people, and to make sure that we minimize, if not totally eliminate, these ill effects of the pandemic. the voting period actually for overseas voters starts a month earlier than in the Philippines. So overseas, the voting period, meaning the period during which they can actually cast their votes, starts on April 9 up to May 8. Meaning that the registered voters will send in their ballots to the Philippine consulates. The ballots will be coming from COMELEC. COMELEC will be sending these ballots to us, the consulate. We have here what we call the Special Ballot Reception and Custody Group. When we receive all those ballots, they will sort it out and send those ballots to the registered forwarding address of all the registered voters. You receive your ballot from us, not directly from the COMELEC, from us. You will now send it back to us, properly filled out, indicating the candidates that you choose for whatever position, for national position anyway, meaning presidential, senator, and party list representatives. So when we receive all those ballots from all the voters, from the more than 32,000, assuming all vote, then we will assemble them and canvass them on May 9, which is election day. Synchronize yan sa Pilipinas. After tallying all the votes here, we will bring the results to the Philippine Embassy in Washington, D.C., where the Washington will serve as the overall canvasser for votes in the United States. And then it's the embassy that will bring the tallied votes from the U.S. to the Philippines. This 2022, we have registered a total of 37,000. And if we are going by the historical trend, wherein you're only expecting about 15% turnout, then we would be expecting only about 5,000 votes coming from under our jurisdiction. I think that in terms of the actual casting of ballots, the pandemic should not be a problem because you are now just going to send it by mail. But then, even if that's the case, I think there needs to be a more intense campaigning, not just among us government officials here, but also among the candidates themselves, to encourage voters to really cast their votes come election day, so that they will exercise the right of suffrage, which is constitutionally guaranteed. In terms of actually casting your vote, did you actually register so that you will really have a say in the way our country is going to be governed for the next 6 years? The vote of the overseas Filipino, whether they're in the US or in other part of the world, is as important as the vote of any Filipino back home. Pareho lang yan. Ang bilang isa lang. So whether you're abroad or in the Philippines, it is important for you to vote, to exercise your right of suffrage, because that is the mechanism given to you by our Constitution by which you can directly participate in the way our country is going to be governed. Please exercise your right of suffrage. Do not pass up on the opportunity. This is your chance to really express your opinion, what you think and who you think should lead our country for the next 6 years. Engage with your fellow Filipinos by discussing issues, not so much the personalities. Ordinary minds talk about people, di ba? Brilliant minds talk about issues.
The prevailing message from the Philippine Consulate General Los Angeles is that no matter where in the world a registered voter is, each vote carries the same weight, which in turn guarantees that every voter's voice can be heard. Eva Pasayahe, Eagle News, Los Angeles.
The news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Alam namin ang iyong pagsisikap. Dama namin ang iyong mga sakripisyo. Kita namin ang pagharap mo sa bawat pagsubok. Kaya sa kabila ng mga hamon ng buhay, nandito kami para umalalay. Kasi katulad mo, gusto rin namin ang magandang bukas para sa kanya. Hatid namin ang dekalidad na edukasyon at makabagong pasilidad sa abot kayang halaga. Kaya huwag ka na mangamba. Sasamahan ka namin tuparin ang mga pangarap niya. Maaasahan mong sulit dito ang mga pinagsikapan mo. Sa aming mga makabagong pasilidad at sistema ng edukasyon. May lalabas natin ang angking talino at mga kakayahan niya. Kahit sa munting halaga, makakasiguro ka na makakasabay siya sa mabilis na pag-ikot ng mundo. Sa New Era, karamay mo kami sa bawat hamon. Kaagapay mo kami sa bawat hakbang. Kasama mo kami sa bawat ngiti at tagumpay.
Welcome back. The Department of Health reported 3,574 new COVID cases, the lowest record of new virus cases this year as COVID positivity rate dropped further to 16.3%. There were also more new recoveries at 14,644 and 83 new COVID fatalities on Tuesday. Now, this brought the number of total active cases to 105,550 or 2.9% of the total confirmed cases of 3,619,633 since the pandemic began in March 2020. Total recoveries have reached 3,459,462 or 95.6% of total COVID cases in the country. Most, or 95.5% of active cases, are still either mild or asymptomatic. The following is the breakdown of these cases as of Tuesday: 96,722 mild cases, 4,052 asymptomatic, 1,446 severe, and 316 critical. Healthcare utilization rate also remained low in both Metro Manila and nationwide. The Department of Health earlier announced that the country is now under moderate risk from high risk due to the continuing drop in COVID cases and the healthcare utilization rate. Cosplayers in the Philippines dressed up as superheroes from Marvel to DC Comics universe and joined forces to persuade children to get vaccinated as the country started its inoculation of minors aged 5 to 11. An indoor sports arena in Manila was decorated with colorful balloons, stickers, and cartoon characters to make them feel like they're entering a children's party. Take a look.
The objective of setting this up like a birthday party is, one, to relieve our children of the stress and anxiety of having to get vaccinated. We understand that children may be scared. That is why upon entering the vaccination site, we want them to get a feel that they are entering a children's party. There are superheroes, there are mascots, there are magic shows, there's a loot bag immediately after you get vaccinated. So it's really the mindset that we are trying to mold here for them to get relaxed.
Parang kakatang po ng langgam. Umugas. Punta sa Kizuna.
To brighten the mood and encourage children, the sites were well decorated with balloons, colorful posters, their favorite cartoon and animated movie characters, kiddie freebies as well. There were also mascots to cheer the children up. The government aims to inoculate more than 15 million children aged 5 to 11. There are 38 vaccination sites in the NCR, including 3 DOH hospitals, namely the Philippine Heart Center, National Children's Hospital, and Philippine Children's Medical Center. Vaccination sites were also set in parks such as the Manila Zoo and in malls. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau demanded an end to a protest by hundreds of truckers against COVID-19 restrictions that has paralyzed the capital. Ottawa's mayor called on federal authorities for support. Take a look.
Individuals are trying to blockade our economy, our democracy, and our fellow citizens' daily lives. It has to stop. This pandemic has sucked for all Canadians. But Canadians know the way to get through it is to continue listening to science, continuing to lean on each other.
Now, he also pledged federal government support with whatever resources the province and city need without elaborating what measures might be planned. The Freedom Convoy demonstrations began January 9 in Western Canada as protests by truckers angry with vaccine requirements when crossing the U.S.-Canadian border. And they have since morphed into broader protests against COVID-19, health restrictions, and Trudeau's government. With the capital center blocked and businesses forced to close, police have come under fire for the protracted crisis. To up the pressure on protesters, Ottawa Police Sunday announced new measures to tame the demonstrations by banning people from bringing fuel and other supplies to the rallies. Protesters had been raising funds to keep up the protests, but they were cut off by fundraising site GoFundMe, which said they had violated its policy against content that promotes behavior in support of violence. Meanwhile, a convoy of trucks and camper vans blocked streets near New Zealand's parliament in Wellington to protest against COVID restrictions and vaccinations. Now, this was inspired by a similar demonstration in Canada, plastered with messages such as "Give us back our freedom" and "Coercion is not consent." Hundreds of vehicles parked in streets surrounding the parliament building known as the Beehive. Let's listen in.
Quite clearly, vaccination does not stop the spread, so therefore there's no reason to mandate unvaccinated people, and that's my main reason why I'm here. I'm actually double vaccinated.
Just want our freedom back, man. That's it. Yeah, we're just concerned about what's going to happen to her later on.
Hundreds more drove around the city center with their horns blaring as more than 1,000 protesters on foot listened to speeches. The demonstration remained peaceful, with police reporting no arrests or major incidents. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern said she had no intention of entering discussions with convoy participants, arguing that the majority of New Zealanders had shown their support for the government's vaccination program. COVID vaccinations are mandatory for people working in certain sectors in New Zealand, such as health, law enforcement, education, and defense. A pass system is also in force, with people required to show proof of vaccination to enter restaurants, sports events, and religious services. It's not required for public transport, supermarkets, schools, and accessing health services. Meanwhile, Chile started administering a fourth COVID vaccine dose to people with weakened immune systems as the country recorded its highest number of daily cases in 6 months. New case numbers had been stable until the appearance of the Omicron variant saw them soar, as it has in many other countries around the world. Take a look. Outgoing Chilean President Sebastián Piñera is one of the first to receive a fourth jab of COVID-19 vaccine A second booster shot reserved for people over 55 for now during his vaccinations in southern Chile in the town of Futrono amid a wave of infections. Chile's vaccination process has been hugely successful, with 87% of the population over 3 fully immunized and almost 67% having also had a booster jab. But Piñera said experience had shown that the effectiveness of vaccines and boosters diminish over time and with the apparition of new variants.
Y hoy día estamos iniciando un proceso masivo de vacunación con la segunda dosis de refuerzo. ¿Qué significa esto? Significa que cerca de 17 millones de chilenos, o sea, prácticamente más del 95% de la población, ya tiene sus 2 dosis de vacuna.
In other news, French President Emmanuel Macron said that he had managed to convince Russian President Vladimir Putin not to escalate the crisis around Ukraine, as the West warns Moscow could be planning an invasion. Russian President Vladimir Putin said he was ready for compromise and he would look at proposals put forward by French leader Emmanuel Macron in talks on Monday, while still blaming the West for raising tensions over Ukraine. Let's listen in.
Dire que le président Poutine m'a en tout cas assuré de sa disponibilité à s'engager dans cette logique et sa volonté de maintenir ses équilibres d'initiative, et en particulier en ce qui concerne la souveraineté et l'intégrité territoriale de l'Ukraine. Les prochains jours seront déterminants et nécessitent évidemment des discussions nourries que nous allons poursuivre ensemble.
Я хочу поблагодарить господина президента за те усилия, которые предпринимает Франция во главе с ним по поводу урегулирования очень острого, не буду скрывать, вопроса, связанного с нашими отношениями с НАТО в целом, по вопросах, связанных с обеспечением безопасности, с созданием на европейском континенте обстановки стабильности, взаимного доверия, ну и, конечно, по вопросам урегулирования кризиса на востоке Украины. Но вы понимаете или нет, что если Украина будет в НАТО и военным путем будет возвращать себе Крым, европейские страны автоматически будут втянуты в военный конфликт с Россией. Конечно, по-моему, всем очевидно, что сегодняшние власти в Киеве взяли курс на демонтаж минских договоренностей. Нет.
Now, President Macron said he made proposals of concrete security guarantees that President Putin had assured him of his readiness to engage. The French presidency said the proposals include an undertaking from both sides not to take any new military action, the launching of a new strategic dialogue, and efforts to revive the Ukrainian peace process. President Putin again denied that Russia was acting aggressively despite Western fears of a possible invasion of Ukraine after Russia amassed tens of thousands of its troops on its borders. President Putin criticized the leaders in Ukraine for not following through on the Minsk agreements to bring a ceasefire to the Donbas region, the pro-Russian-backed separatists in the east of the country. Germany and France also partnered with Moscow and Kiev for the Minsk Accords, which ended the worst of the fighting with pro-Russian separatists in Ukraine's east and remain valuable to President Putin. Again, let's listen in.
If Russia invades, that means.
Dire que le président Poutine m'a en tout cas assuré de sa disponibilité à s'engager dans cette.
Meanwhile, U.S. President Joe Biden made a categorical vow at a meeting with Germany's Chancellor Olaf Scholz to shut down the controversial Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline from Russia to Europe if Moscow launches an invasion of Ukraine. Scholz, however, remained more ambiguous, promising only that he was united with Biden. Let's listen in.
If Russia invades, that means tanks or troops crossing the border of Ukraine again. Then there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
How will you do that exactly?
since the project and control of the project is within Germany's control?
We will, I promise you, we'll be able to do it.
As I already said, we are acting together. We are absolutely united, and we will not taking different steps. We will do the same steps, and they will be very, very hard to Russia, and they should understand.
Biden's declaration was his most blunt so far on the fate of the massive new pipeline, which has been completed, but is yet to begin funneling natural gas to Germany, tying energy-hungry Europe ever closer to Russia. Scholz, making his first trip to the White House since taking over from longtime German leader Angela Merkel, has come under criticism from Ukraine and some in the U.S. over his relatively quieter stand on defending pro-Western Ukraine. At issue is Germany's decision not to join the U.S. and other NATO allies in Europe in sending weapons to help Ukraine's military, and questions over whether Germany is really willing to shelve Nord Stream 2, a measure being considered as one of the most severe in a list of potential sanctions. However, both Biden and Scholz used their press conference to insist that there was no daylight between them. Let's listen in.
There is no doubt in America's mind that Germany is an incredibly reliable ally and one of the leading physical powers in NATO, number one. Number two, the notion that Nord Stream 2 would go forward with an invasion by the Russians is just not going to happen.
We have a close, abiding, important relationship with the Germans. That includes having forces stationed in Germany, which has a huge strategic value to the United States. So today is an opportunity for the president to build on the relationship with the chancellor, to continue to build on the long and abiding relationship with the Germans.
No need to win back trust. He has the complete trust of the United States. Germany is one of our most important allies in the world. There is no doubt about Germany's partnership with the United States, none. With regard to helping Ukraine, one of the largest contributors financially to Ukraine has been Germany.
In the related news, British Defense Minister Ben Wallace held a press conference with his Polish counterpart, Mariusz Błaszczak, in London regarding the Ukraine crisis. Here's Nicole Salenga for the report.
Defense Secretary Ben Wallace on Monday said 350 more British troops would be sent to the Polish border to shore up NATO's eastern flank against any Russian aggression. Wallace said that the troops would strengthen a contingent of 100 British soldiers already there and would be a bilateral deployment to show that they can work together and send a strong signal that Britain and Poland stand side by side. The announcement came following talks between Wallace and Polish Defense Minister Mariusz Błaszczak amid growing fears of a Russian invasion of Ukraine, which would spark a massive exodus of refugees into Poland. Belarus last year allowed migrants to cross its border into Poland, sparking a humanitarian crisis and prompting the deployment of 100 British troops to strengthen the border. Błaszczak told journalists that the additional British troops would cooperate with the Polish armed forces on increasing the security, especially when it comes to threats on the border. Russia is seeking a guarantee from NATO that Ukraine will not enter the alliance and wants the bloc to withdraw forces from member states in Eastern Europe. Wallace on Monday insisted that NATO is a defensive alliance and that Russian aggression could be counterproductive and lead to more NATO, the very thing that President Putin says he doesn't want. Let's listen in to the statement of British Defense Minister Ben Wallace at a press conference in London.
As I was saying last week, obviously there are people in NATO, in Central Europe and Southern Europe, who've expressed either a wish or worries about a consequence of an invasion of Ukraine, and those are, as you've heard, the French talk about an EFP in the south. All of that is in the mix at NATO. We have offered up to NATO a range of forces that we could put into that, but I think ultimately that's a NATO decision about how it wishes to deploy those forces for deterrent or whatever, and we're obviously, those decisions are being made literally as we speak, and we'll find out in the next few days. you saw in the media, obviously, we have put forward, for example, an increase of air policing or a squadron it could help in the area of the Black Sea or indeed in Bulgaria and Romania. That is an option of air. We've also put forward more Navy ship patrols in the Black Sea for the south, but also in marriages as part of the world, whether we could do more force improvements to EFP or indeed other bilateral deployments. And we'll see what NATO choose to do.
Reporting from London, United Kingdom, I am Patricia Rodriguez. We live in interesting times.
In other news, cyclone Batsirai swept out of Madagascar on Monday after killing 21 people, displacing 70,000 and devastating the drought-hit island's agricultural heartland, leading the UN to warn of a worsening humanitarian crisis. Madagascar was already reeling from a tropical storm which killed 55 people late last month. And the latest extreme weather event came as South African President Cyril Ramaphosa said the continent is bearing both the brunt and the cost of global warming. Batsirai first hit a sparsely populated agricultural area in the country's east on Saturday before weakening. The cyclone partly destroyed the main road linking the islands north and south. Around 20 roads and 17 bridges have been cut, according to the country's disaster management agency. Madagascar was still picking up the pieces after Tropical Storm Anna affected at least 131,000 people across the island late last month, with most of the 55 deaths occurring in Antananarivo, and Anna also hit Malawi, Mozambique, and Zimbabwe, causing dozens of deaths. UNICEF warned that many of the victims were likely to be children, who make up more than half of the country's population. After Cyclone Batsirai, the World Food Programme steps in to alleviate hunger among the displaced. With heavy rains, violent winds, and storm surges, intense tropical cyclone Batsirai made landfall on the central eastern coast of Madagascar on Sunday. First, let's listen in.
150,000 people affected, but these numbers they can easily raise. We have right now still the waters increasing in the canals, in the rivers, and people they are still at danger. We know for sure that the rice field and rice crops will be damaged, will be lost. So this is the main crop for Malagasy people, and they will be seriously affected in their food security in the next 3-6 months if we don't do something immediately and we don't help them to recover.
Storms during the agricultural season that runs from October to April have the potential to wipe out harvest, send food prices soaring, and increase food insecurity. According to government estimates, 600,000 people could potentially be affected, 150,000 displaced. Meanwhile, an estimated 13 million people in Kenya, Somalia, and Ethiopia are now facing severe hunger as the Horn of Africa experiences its worst drought in decades, according to the UN. 3 consecutive rainy seasons have failed as the region has recorded its driest conditions since 1981, according to the UN's World Food Programme. Speaking to journalists in Geneva, WFP spokesman Thompson Ferry described the scene he witnessed during a recent trip to northeastern Kenya. Take a look.
After 3 failed rainy seasons, the Horn of Africa is in the midst of a severe drought affecting up to 13 million people. Southern Ethiopia, northern Kenya and Somalia are impacted, livestock are dying, crops are failing, and populations are being forced from their homes.
UNICEF, meanwhile, is appealing for $123 million to cover life-saving needs in Ethiopia, Eritrea, Somalia, and Kenya through the end of June. In 2011, failed rains led to the driest year since 1951 in arid regions of Kenya, Somalia, Ethiopia, Djibouti, and Uganda. Nathan Chen smashed the world record held by fierce rival Yuzuru Hanyu as the shocked 2-time reigning Olympic figure skating champion made a shaky start to leave his title defense in trouble today. Facing off for the first time at the Beijing Games, Hanyu had to settle for a disappointing 8th in the short program, with his younger Japanese teammates Yuma Kagiyama and Shoma Uno 2nd and 3rd. Chen, who scored 113.97 to comfortably beat Hanyu's previous short program record of 111.82, pumped his fist in delight at the end of his performance. He said, "I have no idea what came over me." The American said afterwards of his reaction, "I don't generally do stuff like that, but it just felt right. And I was just really happy. And I guess that just came out." The score takes the three-time world champion one step closer to the only major prize that has eluded him, a gold medal at the Games. Hanyu, who scored 95.15 after making a mistake on his first jump, has to close a gap of almost 20 points in the free skate to be able to compete or to complete his goal of securing a third Olympic title in a row. He told journalists he thought the error might have been caused by a hole in the ice made by another skater. And Californian-born teenage freestyle skier Aileen Gu won gold for China on her Olympic debut at the Beijing Winter Games. Gu, known in China as Gu Ailing, collapsed to her knees on the snow, put her gloved hands to her face, and screamed in delight at the big air Shungang, where enormous industrial cooling towers provide a stunning backdrop. The grade A student and part-time model, who switched allegiance from the U.S. to China in 2019, had been touted as one of the faces of the Beijing Olympics, and she didn't disappoint despite the huge pressure on her young shoulders. Needing something special for gold, Gu nailed a left double cork, 1/620, 4.5 rotations in the air before landing backwards. Gu, born to an American father and Chinese mother, has captivated China and could yet win more gold. She's also competing in the free ski, halfpipe, and slope style. American Ryan Cochran-Sigel took a surprise silver, just 0.04 seconds behind Mayer, with Norway's Alexander Amund Kilt, the big favorite coming into the race, claiming bronze. And as always, I'll end the day on a thoughtful note. Our ability to look back and smile at our past is proof that God's plan is to keep us moving forward. And this has been Eagle News International. I'm Alma Angeles. Stay alert, stay informed, because we live in interesting times. Good night.